music swells and it's beautiful and touching, and I'm like, did I watch like the greatest movie of all time right now? Is that what just happened? You want to be a director? You want to be a filmmaker? This is the kind of movie you watch. Aloha, young filmmakers, fans of action movies, and people looking for the filmmaker's point of view on movies. I am Matthew Salanoa, and welcome to Action Movies, Storytelling Through Action. So, this first part here is really just going to be gut reaction for those of you who know that podcast. But actually, this is the first time I have seen Michael Mann's Heat. This is literally the movie that most people know him from besides Collateral. And I have a friend of mine who had been encouraging me to watch it. Now, I did attempt to watch it after The Dark Knight came out, but I think I was so high on The Dark Knight and Christopher Nolan and the way he approached those movies that at the time I really didn't appreciate what he had to offer. But in addition to that, I actually did not finish the movie. I thought I did, but I think I reached the halfway point in the movie, and I thought, isn't the movie over? Nope. You fell asleep because you were in college, you were working all the time, so you were watching so many movies, your brain couldn't fit it all, and when you gave Heat the time, you didn't give it the proper amount of time. For all my love of Sergio Leone's westerns, which are very slow paced, I didn't appreciate Heat the first time. Watching it again, I am so livid. For those of you who don't know Heat, it's about Al Pacino, who's a homicide detective, investigating this bank robbery, or not a bank robbery, but a armored truck robbery, where these very skilled professional thieves took out an armored truck, stole exactly what they needed from it, and then killed the guards of the armored truck as they left. And so it's Al Pacino's the head detective, the homicide detective, and Robert De Niro is the leader of the professional thieves that robbed the armored truck. So this whole movie is about these two people going head to head, essentially. And you see they're both at the top of their game. They're both experienced and intentional and professional. Well, I mean, actually, I totally see the influences on The Dark Knight, because essentially Al Pacino just runs around smacking and beating people around to get information, which not necessarily police tactics, but yeah, that's what he does in this movie. But it's a really genius movie. It's spoken about as an action movie, although there's really only three major action sequences in it. But considering that this is action movies, storytelling through action, I gotta talk about it. And I really think it's a fantastic example of a great film. Now, up until this point, a lot of my podcast episodes, which I admit they're a bit tedious and boring, but boredom can be good for you if you're trying to study and become a better filmmaker, especially if you want to be a director. You got to be willing to suffer through a little bit of boredom and learn something if you want to improve your game. And that's all I want for you as young storytellers who might stumble upon this podcast. That's all I want for you. So, with that in mind, I'm going to look at Heat. And actually, the action scenes are not the most important thing I'm going to have to talk about. What I love about this movie is that it's all about characters. It's got three major action sequences, but on the whole, what it is it's a really great drama. It's a drama about all these different people and their lives, and really what leads to the conclusion of the movie, which is, who is going to win. And the messed up part about the movie is that you're going to want, at least what I found is by the end, I wanted them both to win. I wanted neither hero or bad guy to die or lose. And it's such a well constructed film. So I'm just going to get into it. If you haven't seen the movie, go see it. But I'm just going to talk about this movie. This is my literal gut reaction. what I liked about the movie, what I think is good bits of storytelling. I'm going to get into all of it. This is just straight into the spoilers. I adore this movie. Right up front, what I like about the film, we get the introduction of Robert De Niro getting off of public transportation, and he goes and gets into an ambulance. He walks through a hospital, he gets into an ambulance, and we're just moving with him. We don't know why. We don't know what's going on. It almost suggests, is Robert De Niro in this movie actually a an ambulance driver who just went nuts or something like that? And no, this is all part of this is the movie setting up its film language, meaning if you see a character just doing something, they're not actually just doing something, they're on the job. And this is very critical to the end of the movie. So the music, the way it's shot. Remember, I talk about directors. You introduce your main character in close up, and right from the top of this movie, we see a train shot, and then the first thing we see is a close up of Robert De Niro's face as he steps off of the train. And then, even though we get the very next shot, we're following behind him in this like semi dramatic shot where he's kind of in the center of the frame. And it's like this shot right here, except you're seeing the back of his head, and you're just following him almost video game like. And this is just traditional filmmaking, but it's an intentional shot. And then when we get to the next shot, and it's this wide shot, he's coming down the escalator. We can only see his face between these rafters. There's other extras there, but we don't see their face. It's all about him and his intention and what he's doing. And then we see Val Kilmer, and he's doing something, purchasing something. And then the very next person we see is Al Pacino, and he's making love to his wife. And it's very passionate, it's very sweet. And what we'll see across this movie, we get into this first major action sequence. What we thought was just a bunch of moments of guys doing different things ends up that we're next introduced to the real villain of the movie, who is part of this part of our professional thief team. And he looks wild. He's got long hair and a kind of a scraggly beard, and he's got tattoos all over him. And he kind of, while we're introduced to Robert De Niro and Val Kilmer and Al Pacino, and each one of them is intentional. They're in the moments. They're focused. When we are introduced to this guy who is going to be the villain of the movie, the first thing he does is he asks for a coffee refill, and then he sees the car and he runs away. He completely abandons the thing that he asked for, which is a very, it seems like it's not important, but I was left lingering thinking, don't you want your coffee? He runs after this vehicle that he sees. Tom Sizemore's driving it, and it's this giant pickup truck with a huge construction thing on the back. And this is all just build up. We're just seeing people talk. The guy gets in the car and says, hey, you're that guy? Hey, you're the guy? Okay, and we're driving. And this guy just starts yapping, running off his mouth, and is so excited to do the job. And Tom Sizemore's like, okay, can you stop talking? You know what I mean? And he's like, and you just see the look on the guy's face. He just looks at him, and he's upset. He's bothered by this. And you kind of know already, like, there's something about this guy that's very off. While everyone else is intentional and does something without saying anything, this guy, he talks, and he's very clearly feels disrespected by being told to stop talking. So he's a narcissist. He's a creep. This guy is off. And then they pull off and then it all comes together with Robert De Niro turning on the sirens and stopping the armored truck full of cash, and the big pickup drives into it, knocking it over, which was a huge stunt where they actually had to put weights on the top of the armored truck to give it a higher center of gravity so it could actually fall over the way that they were trying to make it fall over. So it's fictional. Okay, this is Hollywood. Not everything you see is actually real. But when they made this stunt, and it's so impressive, They come in and they use a shape charge, which I never even heard of before. But literally, it explodes an exact shape of a rectangle so that they can unlatch the door. They get the guards out, and it's our wild bearded guy, the villain of the movie, who ends up, he's sticking a gun in the face of one of the guards who's clearly just experiencing shell shock. He's not looking at him in any particular. He's just shell shocked. And Tom Sizemore tries to tell him, "Hey, dude, his ears are blasted out. He can't hear you." And our cowboy guy decides to shoot the guy that he's staring at, who he thinks is giving him a look. And then everyone decides, okay, then we have to kill all the guards. But later on, we realize Robert De Niro, he didn't want anyone to die. This was not his goal, because now what was a simple, although it was complicated and well planned and even timed for police response, despite all of that, there was no intention to kill anybody. The weapons were just in case they needed them. But now this is a homicide investigation, which increases their level of heat, which is the whole point of the movie. And so right off the bat, Robert De Niro tries to take out the cowboy guy, and he gets away, and we know it's going to be a problem later. But what I appreciate about this movie is that while they can't find the cowboy, these guys are still going to do other missions across the movie. And because of the murder of these armored security guys, now Al Pacino has to go find these guys. That's his job. He's a homicide officer. He's got to find these guys who did this. And what's beautiful about the movie is that you actually see the lives of both our criminals and our heroes. So everyone has relationships in this movie, and it's all about specifically romantic relationships, but also a few of these characters also have kids. Val Kilmer has a kid with his wife. Tom Sizemore has a kid with his wife. And in Al Pacino's case, this is his second or third marriage, as indicated by the commentary. I didn't get far, so that's why this is mostly a gut reaction. But he's married to Diane Venora, who is Juliet's mom from Romeo and Juliet. I had to point that out. And so Natalie Portman plays his stepdaughter. So he has a kid also. And right up front with her character, it's interesting because she's waiting for her father to come pick her up. And she's panicking and freaking out because he's supposed to take her somewhere that means something to her. And indicated by the dialogue, this is not the first time her father has not shown up. And so she's having all this panic and feeling abandoned. Her mother is taking drugs and trying to numb what's going on. And Al Pacino himself, he can barely be around because there's always another murder. There's always another case he has to look into. So he's never really home. And on the flip side, our criminals have they each have very passionate loves as well. But when we see Val Kilmer, he has his own problem where, despite how much money that they've stolen, he blows it all on gambling and drinking. And when we meet him, he's a mess. And his wife is ready to leave him and take his kid away. And so, and it's Robert De Niro. He's actually the only one that's single at the start of this movie. And so it's Robert De Niro who has a great scene where he tells Ashley Judd, who plays Val Kilmer's wife, "You are going to give this guy one more shot," because he catches her cheating with Hank Azaria, of all people. "You're going to give him one more shot, and if he screws up, that's on him, and I will personally pay for however you want to leave him, and you can take your kid." Which, even though it's very gangster and it's very macho, but at the same time, it's like, also it's kind of a brotherhood type of thing. He's really looking out for his friend who is like a brother to him. And at a certain point, Al Pacino and his fellow detectives are on the tail of Robert De Niro and the team. And Robert De Niro, with all of his experience, realizes that they're being tailed. And he tells the guys, look, what we should do is we should all go our separate ways right now. They don't have anything on us yet. But if we do another job and anything happens, we might be screwed. So, you know, the only reason really to do another job is I just want to make sure Val Kilmer gets the money he needs to actually get away and have a life with his wife and kid. But and he even tells Tom Sizemore, like, look, you have a wife and kid too. You've done everything right. You have your money. You put your money in the right places. You can leave right now and live a clean, good life for the rest of your life. And that's when Tom Sizemore, who's fantastic, he plays one of the villains of Enemy of the State, which, you know, even though he's a bad guy, there's something really likable about him because you see him with his family in that movie too. So I've seen, he's been in a ton of movies. He's such a great actor. But this movie's full of great actors. Ted Levine plays one of the detectives, and he's Buffalo Bill in Silence of the Lambs. So this movie is just full of greatness. But, you know, essentially that's what this comes down to, is that everyone has a romantic partner, and some of them have kids, except for Robert De Niro, who throughout the movie finds someone to love. But his whole philosophy is something that he was taught by someone else. If you're going to live this life, then don't get attached to anything you're not willing to leave in 30 seconds if you have to. And that becomes really, you know, I talk about this with the Blade character, that there are characters who change and characters who are challenged. And what I like about the movie is that the hero and the protagonist and antagonist, they're both characters who will not change, but their lives and their beliefs are completely challenged. So across the movie, you see Robert De Niro fall in love with Casper's mom, Amy Brenneman, who is she's known for other stuff, but I know her as Casper's mom. And it's such a sweet little story because they're both from New York, and that's the first thing they bond over, is reading books and being from New York. And then, you know, and I even like how after the first job, while we see everyone else goes to a family, the shot that we see of Robert De Niro is going home, and he's completely alone. And he is a lonely person. You know, he has a lonely life. And I have heard that being a leader requires loneliness. Al Pacino admitted to being in previous marriages. Even his wife is someone who's been through another marriage from which her child is from. But the reason Al Pacino can't hold a marriage together is because he's always chasing another bad guy. And that's a huge point of the movie, is that, you know, both protagonist and antagonist are always chasing something, and it's something that they'll never stop going after. So, but their lives are challenged by their own beliefs. So, as much as Al Pacino loves his wife and loves his stepdaughter, because they clearly have a good relationship, he's clearly caring about her, and she knows that he's at the very least reliable. There's a scene that I love where we just see Natalie Portman sitting at a bus stop, and all of a sudden this cop car drives by, turns its light on, and pulls around in front of her, and it's Al Pacino. He's like, "Hey, what are you doing out here?" And she's like, "I just wanted to be alone," which is so sad. I mean, Natalie Portman is just a crushingly good actress, even at this age. And he's like, "Well, come on, I'll give you a ride home." And she says, "Okay." And you just see that that's their whole relationship. Despite the fact that he's not as available as everyone would like, when he is around, he is present and he's taking care of them. And that's a wonderful quality for a hero. But even on Robert De Niro's side, he's looking out for Val Kilmer and looking out for what he treats as his brother. So what's beautiful about this movie, which is exemplified by the side character who shows up halfway through the movie, played by Dennis Haysbert. He plays the character Breeden, who he's an ex-con. He's just got out of jail. He has this beautiful girlfriend who drives the Bumblebee Camaro. I was like, hey, that's Bumblebee, dude. That's awesome. We're introduced to them kissing in the car, and she says, come on, go do it. You got to do it. And he says, okay. And he goes and he gets his job. And when he's talking to his new boss, the boss says, I'm taking away 25% of your take home. And you can tell right off the bat this is going to be a terrible work experience. It's a really gross, selfish boss. And he's taking advantage of him also because he's an ex-con and he knows that he needs the job. So it's just like this extra level of disrespect. And we see him only a couple more times, and you see him trying to do his job, and he's really committing to being this cook in this kitchen until Robert De Niro shows up. Because Danny Trejo, who I forgot to mention is in this movie, who is amazing. For the 5 minutes Danny Trejo is in this movie, he delivers, a movie's worth of quality acting. And I'll get to that later. But because Danny Trejo gets caught up in something, Robert De Niro needs a driver. And so he finds Breeden, Mr. Dennis Haysbert, who, again, and also, even this guy, for the 5 minutes he's in this movie, there's something interesting about him. He's just got a presence. You feel the weight of his character history. And that's the amazing talent of the cast in this movie, that this character in particular, as well as the actor, exemplifies everything that's so strong about the picture. Is that he has a girlfriend who loves him, and she's proud of him. They have a beautiful scene where you see he's so miserable from his job, and his girlfriend is sitting with him and saying, I'm proud of you. And he's feeling so low because he's not really making much money, and he's putting up with all this disrespect. And he asks, why are you proud of me? And she just says, because, you know what I mean? And it goes without words, but it's just, you just see, she sees his effort, she sees him, and she believes in him so much. And it's such a touching, again, it's only 5 minutes really of this movie, but when our next major action sequence happens, which is the bank heist, and he gets killed, because Robert De Niro asks him to be his driver, and I'm like crushed. I'm like, no, his girlfriend's gonna be so hurt by this. And we see also Tom Sizemore gets killed, and it's like, dang, he has a daughter who loves him. He has a wife who loves him. You know what I mean? And so it's like the first action scene is the death of people we don't know. We don't have any attachment to those characters. So, admittedly, there's not much to go on. Even though they're innocent. They're technically innocent people who are killed. But by the middle of this movie, now we're losing people that we've gotten to know, and we know that they have people they care about. And even though what they're doing is terrible, and they need to be stopped, they're beating people, holding people at gunpoint, threatening their lives. What they're doing is not good. And yet, because now we also know they have all these loved ones, like, well, I don't want you to die, though, you know what I mean? But I don't even feel that feeling until first Tom Sizemore dies. I'm like, oh, but he dies holding a kid as a human shield. So it's just terrible, it's like, these people put themselves in this position, you know what I mean? But still, when they die, there's a reason to care, like, oh, because even then you knew he was also doing this again to help Val Kilmer out. And so their motivations, as much as their actions are terrible and not good for anyone around them, their motivations are relatable. And by getting to know them in their lives, it makes it harder to see them die, which is brilliance of this picture. And essentially, Danny Trejo ends up, the reason he can't do this job is because the cowboy guy who Robert De Niro tried to kill after after this guy had essentially killed those guys at the beginning of the movie, because he's like, this guy's clearly a trouble, we need to take him out now, but the guy got away. Our cowboy guy, Robert De Niro, goes to Danny Trejo's house, finds Danny Trejo's wife dead, finds Danny Trejo dying on the ground, and it's like, who did this? And it's the cowboy who got away. And Danny Trejo is literally doing nothing. He is completely still, all this blood around him. It's a horrific visual by itself. He's literally doing nothing, and you can barely hear him. But every line, he's just saying, "My Anna, my Anna," and again, like, it's the real tragedy. It's not just what happens to the guys, but it's the fact that their loved one will be devastated by the fact the loved one, they're not participating in this. They're benefiting from it. They're not participating in this. And in the case of Robert De Niro, who finds love, his girlfriend does not even know he's doing this. So it's really about the cost of the life you live. So while across this movie, Al Pacino's relationship is falling apart, his wife is becoming more and more distant from him. She even cheats on him with Todd from Terminator 2, of all people. Shout out to Todd, who's in The Walking Dead. And who again plays a dopey guy. He's a dopey loser, terrible foster dad in Terminator 2, but in this movie plays a dopey other guy. Oh, I didn't know she was married. Oh, sit down, Todd. That's not his name in this movie, but he's still Todd to me. And that's a fantastic scene when Al Pacino comes home after all this chaos and just wants a minute to calm down. It's only to find Todd there sitting on his couch, and it's a brilliant scene where his wife isn't saying really much, and he's trying to talk to his wife, and Todd's like, maybe I should leave, and Al Pacino loses it because he's been telling Todd to shut up and stay where he is. And then he finally goes, look, man, you can sit on my wife's couch, you can sleep with my wife in her bed, but you cannot watch my TV. And so he takes his TV out of there. And it's such a great human scene. You know what I mean? It's so human. And because it's such an odd thing that really doesn't make sense, but at the same time, because you're furious, it absolutely makes sense. And it's such a beautiful thing because the TV represents, it's like the one thing I own. The one thing I have here, you've spoiled what I have, and I need something for myself, And that's kind of the thread of the whole movie, is that as he hunts for these for all these killers, Al Pacino is losing his own personal life, and it's falling apart. And through suggestion, his life has fallen apart before. And so there's that question of, what am I doing this? Like, I can't stop doing this. And it's just what I love about Al Pacino's thread is that after the bank heist, it seems like he's not going to catch Robert De Niro, and the cops have found the cowboy and put out the word so that Robert De Niro can realize that he's there. They realize that the cowboy is involved in a bunch of murders and involved with his team and killed Danny Trejo. Everyone's figured out what's going on. But it looks like now they're not going to be able to catch Robert De Niro. So all this drama that he's put his own family through is for nothing. And so it's when he goes home after all of this that he finds Natalie Portman having cut herself in a bathtub full of blood, and he saves her. And that's his one heroic moment. It's like, even though he just lost his wife. He seems like he lost the guy he's been chasing, defeating the point of all the drama he's been through. But he's found his daughter like this and his stepdaughter like this. He brings her to the hospital, and it's such a beautiful scene where the wife is finally, although they've grown distant across the whole movie, now they're back together again. It's so touching, you know. It's such a, like, that's a real, like, yes, he may not be present as much, but when he is present, he absolutely cares about you, and he does everything, and he's not running around cheating. He's just doing his job, fighting crime. And it's such a beautiful scene that he gets a little bit of resolution because his wife realizes that they care about each other and that maybe they shouldn't part. But he comes to the conclusion that, hey, I'm really not the best person for you to be with, because I'm always going to be chasing the bad guy. I'm always chasing what I'm chasing. And so they're they get some form of resolution, but it's still hanging in the air where it's all going to go for them, which is a beautiful way for that story to be concluded. But on the flip side, Robert De Niro's girlfriend, when Robert De Niro comes back from the bank heist and Val Kilmer's been shot and he's with the only friend he has left, but everyone else has died, and the way he's acting, it's so clear to his girlfriend, were you a part of that mayhem downtown? And she tries to run from him, and he chases her because he's scared she's going to go to the cops, and basically is kind of kidnapping her. And they just have this, they too have this beautiful scene where she doesn't want to be around him. He tries to kiss her, she just keeps moving away, but she can't really stay away from him because he's holding her and forcing her to be there. And he finally tells her, like, look, like, I just don't want to be alone. You know what I mean? I'm all alone. I've been alone for so long, and I just don't want to be alone. And that's actually what breaks her and makes her kind of, it's very Stockholm syndrome, but that's what breaks her and kind of makes her participate, because he had already set up the notion of, let's run away together to another country, and I'll take care of you with all my money. So it's such a sad story because he can only hold on to his romance by force, which is how he lives his life. Everything he gets is by force. And then ultimately, as he's about to get away, he has his plan. He's gonna go to the airport, get on the plane with his girlfriend. Everything's gonna work out for him. There's a touching scene where Val Kilmer, he comes home in a new car, and Ashley Judd and her kid, they're already there with the cops, and the cops are just waiting for her to let him in so they can arrest him. And he steps out of the car. He has a new haircut, hair dyed. We know that he has his way out. But Ashley Judd, she smiles, and she just does this thing with her hand that kind of suggests, don't come up here. It's something that means something to them, and I don't get it, but it makes sense that he reacts and goes, oh, I can't come up and see my wife right now. But he actually gets away, and there's something kind of beautiful about it, you know? As terrible as he is, he's killed people, done terrible things. He is not necessarily a sympathetic character based on his actions, but the fact that we know his story, and we know that they only did the bank heist to make sure he had the money to survive. It's seeing him get away is somehow this really rewarding experience. But as Robert De Niro is trying to get away, that's when he gets the call that the cowboy is at this hotel that's not far from the airport. And that's when he's like, okay, I've got one more thing to do. And leaves his girlfriend in the car on the backside of the hotel. And then we're back to the filmmaking of the beginning of the movie, where we're behind him now. He's doing something. Even the music, as low as it is, it really suggests the power of what's going on. Just like the beginning of the movie, it's low key, but we are back. We're back to the mission again. We're back on the job. And he gets in there, he pulls the fire alarm, and blocks the elevator so that he can cause all this chaos because he knows he needs to trick this guy into opening the door. He's not going to open the door if he sees Robert De Niro outside there. So he tricks him, he shoots him. The music is scary and it's horrifying, even though this guy totally deserves it. And yet, what really gets me is when the girlfriend sees all the chaos happen and suddenly the fire department shows up and you just see her cry and cover her mouth like, oh my god, like her Stockholm syndrome kind of breaks, and yet she still waits. She still waits. And when Robert De Niro gets back to the car, Al Pacino is there because he got the call. And Robert De Niro looks at her and then he runs. And Al Pacino chases after him. And I just had that terrible mixed feeling of like, I want Robert De Niro to get away. You know what I mean? It's like I'm sympathetic to him killing that other guy. That guy we learned was a serial killer who killed children, who killed Danny Trejo and his wife in horrific ways. You know what I mean? He was a terrible. That guy was a villain. You know what I mean? I talk about the difference between villains and antagonists, and it's okay to have a villain. You just have to. It's all about where you're going. But in essence, Robert De Niro, who's really only he is a villain by killing the people at the beginning, but for the most of the movie is just an antagonist. But by the end of the movie, by going out for revenge, becomes the villain of his own life, ruining the terms of his own life and his own freedom, abandons his girlfriend, and it comes down to the final conclusion where protagonist and antagonist are against each other. And the showdown, it's like I literally felt the heat of it at the end of the movie, which is like, I think it's so symbolic that he pulls a fire alarm. Although there's not a real fire, there is the heat and the tension of everything that's going on. And I think even maybe instinctually, by hearing the fire alarm and seeing the chaos and seeing the fire trucks, I think just instinctually it makes me feel like, oh snap, there's a fire. It makes you kind of naturally, instinctively feel the heat. And so when the last chase happens, it's not an explosive action scene, but the tension is so vivid and real. And I've never wanted both people to win so bad. Like Al Pacino, I want you to get the guy because he has done terrible things. He literally ends the story kidnapping and killing, and it's like he is a villain at this point. But it's just it's tragic that it comes to this, because I also simultaneously want him to get away, because I know he was motivated here and there by things you can empathize with, you know. And that was the powerful bit. And then it just ends with these two guys shaking hands or holding hands as Robert De Niro dies after Al Pacino finally shoots him. And the music swells and it's beautiful and touching, and I'm like, did I watch like the greatest movie of all time right now? Is that what just happened? You know, it was so powerful. But you know, the filmmaking is just so strong, the writing is so good, and the directing is so good, the cast is so good. It's really an incredible emotional experience. And so what I have to say about this movie, it's an action movie, but technically it's an action drama, because the action scenes are extended, they're intense, and they're mostly suspense. This is my problem with television action, is that they always think that they have to do stunt, 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 stunt. But actually, you can have extended periods of pure suspense, and that will captivate an audience. And that's what Heat is full of, just non-stop suspense about what's going to happen next. And the suspense comes from not just how well the action scenes are shot, but the fact that we get to know all the characters across the movie, what matters to them, who's important to them. And like I said, it's all comes down to the Breeden character, Dennis Haysbert. For that 5 minutes he's on screen, the fact that when his girlfriend sees on the news he's dead from participating in this bank robbery, and you see her reaction is so small, and yet so epically crushed. It's so real. And then that's the same thing that literally all the women character go through, but Danny Trejo, my Anna, you know what I mean? It's like this movie makes you feel something for everybody. And it's also something that I remember my mom saying, because she is a police officer. She's a dispatcher specifically. She doesn't go out there on the field, but she's the one who gets all the horrible calls that people do to each other out there in the world. And I remember asking her, like, what is it that you wish they showed in the movies and TV that they don't show about what you experienced? And she said, well, they don't show the families that suffer, whether it's the criminal or the victim. They don't show the families that suffer over these crimes, whoever did what. They never show the family that has to go through, what a gangster did to another gangster, or when a drunk driver runs over somebody. They never show the family, because that is what the police have to deal with, is telling the family what happened and having to ask questions to get information, because is this connected to something larger where someone else might get hurt? That's their entire job, and it's something that regular people can't appreciate. And that's what this movie completely delves into. It's both real and authentic in many levels, and gets you to care about every single character. And that's the strength of Heat. It's a movie about characters that you care about, even though they're on both sides of the law. And that's what filmmaking and storytelling is all about, is getting you to understand something that's both complicated, nuanced. It's not simple black and white, it's gray. It's the truth that's in the middle that you don't get on the news, you won't get it from your friends. It's the real truth that we have to deal with when dealing with these types of situations. So, Heat, this is my first watch. I can't believe what an amazing picture this is. Michael Mann wrote and directed it. What a fantastic filmmaker. He's got Ferrari that came out 2 years ago, and he made Ollie. I think I've never been into sports or racing, so, aside from Talladega Nights, I don't got much, but I think I might check out these movies now, because I love Collateral. Collateral is one of my favorite action movies I've ever seen. And now this movie, I realize what a legendary picture this is. This is the goal of filmmaking. This is the pinnacle. If you want to be a filmmaker, this is the movie you study. So I am going to watch all these bonus features. Maybe I'll have more to say. I don't know yet. But as far as it goes, this is one of those movies. You want to be a director? You want to be a filmmaker? This is the kind of movie you watch, because every choice in this movie is storytelling, and it's powerful. This is what we look to for what we want to do. It's depth, meaning, how it all comes together. Every character matters, and there's not a wasted line of dialogue. Everything is important to the story. And by the end, when that music swells, damn does it feel good. So that's my gut reaction thoughts. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Action Movies, Storytelling Through Action. If I have more to say, I'll make another video. But for now, go check out Heat. It's worth studying top to bottom. And I hope to see you next time.